Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Tech Bytes review. Today we are going to be taking a look at the Kinesis Advantage 2. This is definitely an oddball for keyboards out there. This is purported to be one of the most ergonomic keyboards that you can find. You can see it has concave handwells, as well as kind of an interesting thumb cluster placement for space and backspace. So a lot to talk about on this one. It has just about as many pros as it does cons, unfortunately. And for right around the $315 price range, we'll see if the typing experience outweighs some of the glaring flaws in the build and design. Now, jumping into build quality like we usually do, let's go ahead and cover the case. This is honestly my least favorite thing about the entire keyboard. This keyboard, it feels flimsy as hell when you first get it. So you're buying this $315 keyboard. You expect to have kind of a nice premium solid feel to the case itself, but it's not. I don't know if you can see and how this comes across on the video, but this is extremely flimsy, extremely hollow, just cheap plastic. You could almost dent it with your thumb by pushing on it. It wobbles. I mean, this thing you could hold it with just like 2 fingers, and it's that light. It's just such a light, flimsy little thing. I hate the case. It's awful. It's just really awful. You could see in the wells as well just how flimsy this thing is. So that's the PCB underneath the board itself that the switches are installed into, that green thing. And this is how flimsy and thin the case actually is. You can see right through. I mean, we're talking maybe just a few millimeters thick, and that's all the way across. There's no real saving grace anywhere. There's a real big ugly seam that goes all the way across. In some places it doesn't even match up perfectly. It's just I hate the case on this thing. Definitely not what I expected when I ordered this and what I thought I was going to be getting. For reference, I have just an old DOS keyboard. This is a sub $100. This is under $100 for a DOS keyboard. You can see the 2-finger test doesn't work too well. It has some weight to it. This is solid aluminum on the top. The back is real sturdy plastic, and overall it's just, there's no echo when you hit it. And that's just from a cheap keyboard. So coming up into this tier, into this price range, the case, no, I can't stand it. Now, the keycaps themselves actually do make up for kind of the issues that I have with the board itself. If you can make out on the video, you can see that each key is not only placed in the position that your hand would naturally lie, but they're also curved slightly on the top. So the home row is actually going to have a bit more of a curve to it than some of the other keys that you have. And that helps you, so whenever you put your hand in there, you can naturally find the home row because they have a bit more of a curve to the top. So instead of having the finger bumps up at the top, your hand will just naturally fit there. The keycaps themselves are extremely solid feeling. I mean, especially these blue rows, they're even thicker than the outer ones, and they feel fantastic. They're real nice, sturdy. I don't get the impression that these are laser etched. They feel like they're quality and that they'll actually last a while. That goes for all keycaps as well, even some of our weird backspace and delete keys down here. It's overall really sturdy keycaps, very happy with it. Now, moving on to the keys up at the top here for the function layer, these not so much. These are really, really crappy switches. You can hear there's not even a click. They're just complete mush. No tactility whatsoever. It's like pressing a button on your remote control, honestly, is what it feels like. They're just extremely crappy, and whenever you're typing, say you're using Visual Studio and you press F5 to compile, good luck. You have a pretty decently far stretch to hit it, and you'll end up smashing multiple buttons at the same time because they're not spaced far enough apart that your finger won't hit multiple. So it's an overall really crappy design. The buttons themselves just suck, and I really, again, for what you paid, I wish we would have had at least a button that made some form of audible click, but apparently that was too much to ask here. Onto the switches themselves, the key switches. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it's my understanding that Kinesis actually went to Cherry back in like the 80s or 90s and specifically requested that they create the Cherry MX Brown just for this keyboard, just for this line, the Kinesis Advantage series. And that has to do with the ergonomics. They wanted something that was similar to a Cherry MX Blue, but they were convinced, whether right or wrong, that having something that still had the tactility of a blue but required less force to push down would in turn be healthier on your finger joints and provide better ergonomics overall, which is the name of the game with this board. This is purely ergonomic. So if you love browns, you have Kinesis to thank. If you hate browns, write them an angry letter, I guess. But that's my understanding. Kinesis was kind of had the original goal in mind to create that particular switch. So nothing to write home about there. They are very standard Cherry MX browns. Nothing special. They sound like browns. They feel like browns. I don't like browns. It's not the worst feeling in the world for a keyboard, but again, at this price range, you're left wanting more. It does come in two options for the Kinesis Advantage 2. You have both the browns. You also have Cherry MX Reds, which are a linear switch. Again, not really a fan of those, so I opted to go for the browns. Now, moving on to the back of the keyboard, no flip-up feet, as you can see. They feel that you don't need it in this particular case, and to be quite honest, you don't. The way that the concave design is and the way that your hand sits in the keyboard, you really don't need flip-up feet. There are a lot of studies that go into the details about why having your wrist cranked up at an angle is a bad thing, and this actually has a bit of a negative slope to it, so it really prevents that. So you don't need the feet. I'm not even going to knock it on that because it's just not necessary. But this cable, my God, this cable. Let me give you a reference point to show you just how thin and fragile this cable is. So this is coming off of the DOS keyboard over here. And do you see the size difference? This is a super, super thin cable compared to, it's maybe 3/4 of the size of just a DOS keyboard. And this is for, I knock it because first off, it's not detachable. Second off, it's extremely thin, just waiting to get ripped out of the back. And then finally, it's not even up to the same quality as a keyboard that costs a fraction of the price. So overall, I wanted to love it. I really wanted to love the feel of the board, everything about it. But unfortunately, the build quality of this particular keyboard, the Kinesis Advantage 2, gets a giant thumbs down. It missed the mark in just about every single metric that I could throw at it. Now, the typing experience of the Kinesis Advantage 2 is definitely a bit of an interesting one. I'll be quite honest, when I first started using it, I thought there was no way I was going to be able to get past that break-in period. The first thing that you'll probably notice when you go to type on this is that the keys are in what they call an ortholinear layout. They're not staggered like on a traditional keyboard. That means that if you normally hit the B key with your right index finger, which is something that I did prior to using this will correct you immediately just because of the fact that there is no B key over here. So you are definitely forced into typing with the right fingers in the proper position. And that concave design is going to force your hand to kind of sit at a very natural angle. You can see your hand literally just rests in that cup very naturally. And your thumb naturally lands on the enter and space keys in the thumb cluster. Overall, if all you do is type in a Word document and you use very, very few modifier keys or anything else, and you're just using space, enter, backspace in the keys, it's not that bad. Yes, it takes maybe about 2 weeks to get back up to the typing speed that you were at previously. But all in all, it's really not that painful of an adjustment. Those first couple days will be very, very slow, very tedious. You'll want to chuck the keyboard out the window, but you will get past it. And again, about 2 weeks and you're right back up to the speed that you were prior. Now, where this gets to be a little bit more difficult to justify a layout like this is if you are a heavy user of the modifier keys. So let's just take an example. Say you're programming, right? And you want to use your Control-Shift-Arrow key right to highlight words as a whole, right? And so all of a sudden you're doing Control-Shift-Left arrow key, right? And so you have this weird stretch that you jump into, and then your up and down arrow keys are over here on the right hand side. So everything is split, and whenever you're hitting these, if you're hitting them the way the layout intends to, it's to do it from muscle memory, so you're not looking, so you're keeping other fingers up here, and it becomes very taxing on your fingers and very, very time consuming if you're using something like an IDE where the modifiers are extremely important. There is, now let me point this out before anybody jumps on me in the comments and says, hey, well, you're missing a key part that this has programmable macros. This does. If you look up at the top, you can program right here. We have a program and a keypad, which turns into a numpad, but importantly, the program button here, which allows you to set macros all the way across the top. So you can do things like program FF to be open Vim or something along those lines, right? Or initiate a key sequence of some kind by performing some kind of macro. Now, that's extremely powerful because it saves to the board in memory on the board itself, which means that you can plug and play this into any computer and your macros will be saved onto the board. Great, you don't need any other external software. But I still get back to, if I'm paying $315 for a keyboard and I need to do things like program macros just to highlight words to tab over to the left and right, it becomes a bit like you're trying to justify why you spent the money on the board in the first place. And quite frankly, that was the end of the road for me. You could see a lot of the keys have been moved around as well when it comes to some of the more special keys. So you have your brackets down here, which definitely is a little interesting. Your tilde also moved, which is down here at the very bottom. Normally, it would be up here somewhere towards the top of escape, plus an equal sign is over there. So again, if all you do is type in a Word document or hammer out emails and you do have any kind of wrist issues or anything, this is going to be a perfect keyboard for you. It's perfectly viable. But if you do anything more advanced, especially if you're a heavy Excel user or anything that involves real heavy arrow keys, I don't see how you ever get used to this to be able to effectively perform your day-to-day activities. Let's have a quick conversation on the ergonomics, because obviously I don't want to leave it out. I know I've touched on a million other things. Ergonomics are definitely the reason this keyboard exists, right? The reason this layout is split like this, the reason there's thumb clusters. So did I notice any difference? Well, I'm young. I'm almost in my 30s, and I sit at a keyboard most every day for work, and so I don't really have too much shoulder pain, wrist pain. I don't really have any of that to begin with, so I didn't really notice this saving my back or saving my neck. It just wasn't really a factor prior to me buying it to begin with. So from an ergonomic standpoint, it feels nice to type on, but I don't know that if you try to do this finger dance to use modifier keys and things, I don't know how ergonomic that is, and I don't know, overall if the benefits are really there and can outweigh a lot of the funkiness going on. Overall, if I were to give the Kinesis Advantage 2 a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably give it somewhere around a 3 or a 4. And that just takes into account everything from poor case and overall build quality, the fact that more tactile switches aren't offered, and just the fact that a lot of the key placement and things I don't think are going to be good for most people. And that concludes today's review, everyone. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you liked or didn't like in the comments down below. Stay tuned for the next one. I try to get a video released at least once a week, do everything from keyboards to mice reviews and looking at extending some of the videos that I'll be doing going forward. So thanks again for watching.